Hello and welcome to another ship review. Today we will look at Navy Cormorant. This is Kaldari Navy Destroyer. It was released in 2022 together with 3 other Navy Destroyers, and it turned out to be the least used of these 4. I would say the ship is still quite solid. The main issue is that it competes in the same niche as Navy Catalyst, and Navy Catalyst generally does the same thing better. This is actually quite common in frigate and destroyer ecosystem. For example, in Tech 1 frigates you have Merlin and Incursus, and most people would take Incursus. In assault frigates you have Harpy and Enya, and most people would pick Enya. And in Navy Destroyers you have Navy Cormorant and Navy Catalyst, and most people would take Navy Catalyst. So as I said, this ship is not very popular, very much overshadowed by Navy Catalyst, and the win rates are a bit worse. Now CCP looked at this and they decided to buff it in June 2026, so these numbers are before the buff. I'm recording this video a few weeks after the patch was released. I think the buff was really unnecessary. To be honest, if we look at the average win rates of Navy destroyers and average win rates of T1 destroyers, the difference is massive. So it's about 25 for T1 destroyers and about 70 for Navy destroyers, so 45 to 50 percentage points. If you look at Navy frigates against Tech-1 frigates, it would be around 60% for Navy frigates and about 30% for Tech-1 frigates, so about 30% difference. And even there, Navy frigates are quite oppressive. Generally, people tend to fly Navy frigates because Tech-1 frigates are not do not offer decent performance. And here it's even worse. So what I would do is I would nerf these guys to the level of Navy Cormorant at around 60% instead of buffing Navy Cormorant to the level of these 3 guys. Because what will happen now, the win rate of Navy Cormorant will grow, and when CCP released another 4 new Navy destroyers, and these 4 new Navy destroyers will have to be balanced around these win rates, around 70%. And when you have 4 Navy destroyers that score around 70%, there is literally no way people will use Tech-1 destroyers. And this is not really healthy for the ecosystem. So essentially you added 4 ships, and then you made 8 ships obsolete, so nobody will use them. So I would go in the different direction, but we will see how it goes. Okay, so for the profile and performance, again, this is all based on the data before the buff. I expect that win rates will probably grow by somewhere around 5 percentage points on average, and tire would be between like balanced and balanced plus. So not a huge change, but it will be noticeable. Now, the Navy Cormorant archetypes are very similar to Navy Catalyst. It can either brawl with blasters or webkite with rails and Tenement Afterburner. Now, for brawling, it's actually a bit better because tank and DPS is higher. You cannot really out-brawl Navy Cormorant. For this specific role, it's the best ship Navy Destroyer down. For webkiting, it's quite a bit worse than Navy Catalyst because the bonus to optimal range is not as useful as more damage, but you can use it as well. And in terms of weapons used, as you can see, fairly as expected, the majority of Navy Cormorants will use blasters. Now, as for the engagement map, generally the engagement profile is very polarizing. So basically, if you can hold your opponent within the desired range, Navy Cormorant is very good. If you cannot do it, Navy Cormorant is very bad, because you cannot really apply DPS. So I guess this is another reason for a fairly low popularity of this ship, because it's quite difficult to find any meaningful content for it. Okay, let's look at the most popular feats next. Okay, so I will show you 2 feats for the Blaster Cormorant and 1 feat for the Webkiting Rail Cormorant. The feats in general are very straightforward. It's all about the trade-offs that you want to take. So for the Blaster Cormorant, you have a choice between 1 medium ancillary shell booster and 2 medium ancillary shell boosters. The trade-off is that with a single MASB you get much better mobility, better control, but significantly worse tank. For 2 medium ancillary shield boosters, it's the opposite. You get monstrous tank, but your control and agility are really bad. This is almost a stationary platform if you go for 2 MASBs. The baseline is this one, so 1 single MASB. Fit is pretty straightforward, maximum DPS in high slots, so largest blasters plus rocket launcher. MWD, tank, scrum web, more tank, more DPS, and then Rix is the typical combination, resist plus more DPS. The alternative is this one, so this time you go for double MAS beam. You can probably cram a micro warp drive here, but since you don't have a web, I feel like this is probably one of the very rare reasons, very rare cases where you can fit one MN AB on a destroyer, since your control and mobility will be so bad without a web that it doesn't really matter. If a kiter comes in, you are dead anyway, and if a scrum kiter comes in, they will be able to escape anyway, so you are not getting too much out of micro drive. But I guess you can fit MWD here. The rest is practically the same. You will get slightly lower DPS because you cannot fit a DPS rig. But yeah, everything else is the same. Now, what's the trade-off in terms of engagement profile? So this feat will kill anything within the blaster range. You can also use it to fight against multiple frigates. It can very easily take on like 3 brawling Tick 1 frigates easily, and you will just face tank them. It will instantly die to any kiter, and you will most likely die to most scrum kiters as well. Well, you are certainly not going to kill them because your control is just non-existent. With this one, you get much better control, so even if you're scrum kited, you can just switch to null, and your application at scrum range with a web will be quite respectable. So even though you will not be able to hold your opponent at scrum range, you will likely be able to at least force them off. It is quite strong for brawling, but some opponents will be able to out-brawl you. And against kiters, you may get a better opportunity since you will have a macro warp drive instead of afterburner. So that's the trade-off. Now, web kiting, it's very similar to web kiting Navy Catalyst. You also have a choice between 125mm Tech 2 railguns and 150mm Metaphor railguns. I think in this situation, 125mm railguns are a bit better because you're not really concerned about the lack of optimal range. Since this ship has a bonus to optimal range, you will get plenty of range with antimatter even with 125mm railguns. And the rest is pretty straightforward. 10 mana beam, tackle and web, plus your tank, plus everything else is pretty straightforward. You may be able to drop one of the fitting rigs if you have a perfect skills and you are willing to fit like a small PG implant. In this case, you can drop this and replace it with a thermal rig. The problems of this fit compared to 10MN Catalyst is that your DPS is worse, which is a bit of a problem, and your control is a bit worse as well. So generally, Navy Catalyst does the same role, just slightly better. Not by a ton, but slightly better. But you can use this as more of a surprise weapon, especially if you sit inside complexes. People will be willing to bring something that counters blast Navy Cormorants since they're so popular. And then you will hit them with railguns. So this may work a bit better when the Navy Catalyst. Okay, I hope you found it useful and I will see you in the next ship reviews.